In the end, the party would announce that 2 and 2 made 5, and you would have to believe it. It was inevitable that they should make that claim sooner or later. The logic of their position demanded it. Not merely the validity of experience, but the very existence of external reality was tacitly denied by their philosophy. The heresy of heresies was common sense.
Truth does not die naturally. It must be intentionally and systematically destroyed. We are currently witnessing the intentional annihilation of truth.
We are now going through a time when truth itself seems to be increasingly marginalized from academic scholarship.
Like, it's a yes. Obviously it's a yes. There's no question.
And it creates this idea that boys and girls are inherently different, which is something we're trying to stop in our society.
So I just want to encourage you today, there's no right way to be a woman, okay? Let's just go ahead and break that binary. Some women have facial hair. Some women shave their armpits, some don't. Some men have vaginas. Some women have penises.
The battle to keep truth alive is probably the most crucial struggle of our time.
There is truth, and there is untruth. Freedom is the freedom to say 2 + 2 = 4.
This battle to safeguard truth is the mostly misunderstood struggle, commonly known as the culture war. So why are the woke at war with truth? Why are they intentionally murdering truth? To understand the war against truth, we must first understand what wokeness is, where it comes from, and what it truly aims to achieve. Understanding these things is vital to understanding what is happening in the world. This tweet expresses what the left would like you to believe woke means. Woke was a positive term that came from black communities to denote that someone has become aware of hardships that the majority culture often ignored or remained blissfully unaware of. To be fair, many people who claim to be woke and embrace woke culture honestly believe this is what it means. They are well-intentioned, but have been misled and used as pawns in an ideological war. But this is not the true origin or actual meaning of woke. To understand the true meaning of woke, we must trace its ideological origins. The term woke can be traced back to the same place as all current leftist ideologies. Ironically, while the left claims that straight white men are inherently racist, all leftist ideology is derived from the ideas of one straight white man, Karl Marx. Marx claimed that for his socialist revolution to occur, the working class needed to become aware of their oppression. In other words, they needed to awaken into what he called class consciousness. Marx believed that the property-owning class, the bourgeoisie, as he called them, oppressed the working class, whom he called the proletariat, and the only way to end this oppression was for the working class to become aware of their oppression, and rise up against the property-owning class and seize the means of production. In other words, steal everything. Marx predicted that this awakening would happen naturally and lead to a worldwide socialist revolution. His prediction was wrong, and his socialist revolution never took hold in the West, but his ideas lived on and were expanded on by neo-Marxists. Neo-Marxist conflict theories now drive all current leftist thinking. Contemporary ideologies such as intersectionality, critical race theory, gender theory, and postmodern feminism are all forms of neo-Marxism. We can trace their ideological ancestry back to postmodernism, critical theory, and neo-Marxists such as Antonio Gramsci. Born in 1891, Antonio Gramsci was an intellectual, a politician, and a founding member of the Communist Party of Italy. Gramsci developed the ideas of cultural Marxism that continue to influence society today, most notably his theory of cultural hegemony. At the time, the worldwide collapse of capitalism and the socialist revolution that Marx had predicted had not occurred. While Russia had succumbed to communism, the Western world remained immune. Gramsci, like other neo-Marxists, wanted to explain why the West had not adopted socialism. He also wanted to formulate a plan to ensure it would. He did not believe that people would spontaneously become aware of their so-called oppression, so Gramsci focused on culture. He believed people had to be purposefully awakened to their oppression to achieve class consciousness. This idea of being awakened into class consciousness is where we get the misunderstood term woke. Lil Fangs was right when she said, by woke, I mean brainwashed by extremist liberal propaganda.
I hate that white supremacy does not allow me to love the way that I want to. I don't hate men. I hate the system of patriarchy and misogyny that means I have to be careful about even going outside where men might be located.
So, once you have been brainwashed into believing you are the oppressed victim of an unfair society, you have been awakened into class consciousness. Put another way, you are now woke. Wokeness is nothing more than a rebranding of Marxism, disguised behind the false claims of fighting racism and sexism. However, the true aim of Marxism has been, and always will be, the destruction of free Western libertarian democracies, and the institution of socialism. Gramsci realized that politics is downstream of culture. In other words, control of culture means an influence on politics. Gramsci suggested that the ruling class used culture to maintain power. According to Gramsci, the ruling class had cultural, moral and ideological control over society, allowing them to maintain power without violence. He called this hegemony, the cultural norms of one group, legitimized as the social norms for all.
Being on time is white supremacy because what are they always on time to do? Oppress. I'm always going to be 10 to 15 minutes late because that's the correct time, according to my people.
Hegemony is another way of saying consensus values. It is a culture's shared ideas, norms, and values. In classical liberalism, hegemony is seen as a positive thing, the idea that society shares values, regardless of our identity. The fact that society can agree on shared values does not mean one group oppresses another. Instead, it demonstrates that people can choose the values that serve the community as a whole best. For example, liberalism does not view principles such as rationalism as a tool of oppression, but as one that is necessary and aids in collective progress. But Marxist conflict theory, like wokeness, suggests there is no such thing as shared values, only group values. In conflict theory, there are no universal values. Like Marx, wokeness believes that everything in society is a zero-sum game. One group must lose for the other to win. There is no such thing as mutual benefit. Therefore, it claims that hegemony is false. Gramsci claimed that hegemony was not natural, but rather created by the oppressive class, to keep the oppressed class under control. Even values such as rationalism and the idea of objective truth are claimed to be nothing more than oppressive structures.
You know, one of the reasons why cis people think they're real or natural or the default is because they've fallen into the trap of the myth of white supremacy. Yup.
While Gramsci was wrong about what created hegemony, he was correct in how it could be used to force society to accept socialism artificially. Gramsci's correct conclusion was that before the economic means of production could be seized, Marxists first needed to take control of cultural production. He believed a cultural revolution had to occur before a political revolution was possible. Effectively, there needed to be cultural colonization of Western society. Hence, the culture war. Gramsci believed that to achieve a socialist revolution, institutions that support cultural production must be colonized by Marxists. Gramsci called this process the Long March through the hegemony of the institutions. Gramsci said, "In the new order, socialism will triumph by first capturing the culture via infiltration of schools, universities, churches, and the media by transforming the consciousness of society." In other words, Marxists needed to create a counter-hegemony that would weaken social cohesion and allow new values to be transfused into society. Gramsci believed that creating a counter-hegemony would weaken society to the point where revolution became inevitable. Counter-hegemony, or counterculture, could be more accurately described as anti-culture. It is a culture that is artificially introduced into society to cancel out the existing culture. As a Gramscian scholar points out, counter-hegemony is not a real hegemony in strict sense, but economic, political, and ideological preparations for hegemony before overthrowing capitalism or before winning state. Counter-hegemony is not the hegemony you intend to create. It is the anti-culture that you use to destroy the existing hegemony. In other words, the step between liberalism and Marxism. Diane Kaelin Sucre said, "Culture is like a forest. The seeds are your core values. Once they take root as behaviors, they can grow into trees, populating your cultural forest. Bad seeds produce unhealthy forests, infertile and plagued by infestations. Good seeds produce a healthy forest and ecosystems that support life. One is sustainable, the other is simply not. The point of counter-hegemony is to produce an unhealthy cultural forest that is unsustainable." Let's think of culture as a bus transporting society down a highway. Counter-hegemony is not a bus riding alongside, offering an alternative culture. Instead, it is more like a bulldozer barreling down on the bus from the opposite side, intent on a destructive head-on collision. A counter-hegemony is intended to destroy the existing culture, which is why the values it promotes are destructive. The culture war is the ideological battle to destroy Western hegemony by transfusing this destructive anti-culture into society. What does wokeness want to achieve? The aim of wokeness is straightforward. It is not to end racism, fight the patriarchy, or secure trans rights. The purpose of wokeness is to create Gramsci's counter-hegemony. Wokeness is the poison you put into society to create anti-culture. Stefan Molyneux said, "The whole purpose of propaganda is to make the obvious seem obscure or offensive." If you think about it, this is exactly what wokeness has managed to do in society. It has made the obvious appear obscure and offensive. Even though it is obviously true that only women can get pregnant, saying so is now considered to be offensive. So how has wokeness managed to do this and make truth offensive? By doing what Gramsci proposed, infiltrating and colonizing the cultural institutions of society and transforming the consciousness of society. In propaganda, this is known as transfusion. The rule of transfusion, manipulating the consensus values of the target audience for one's own ends. In medical terms, a transfusion is a process of injecting blood from one person into another. If a doctor gives their patients healthy blood, they can save their lives. However, if they give them poison blood, the patient dies. In propaganda, transfusion is injecting a new set of consensus values, or shared views, into society. Transfusion is the process of using propaganda to change a society's shared culture, ideas, norms, and values. But because the aim of counter-hegemony is to weaken society, the transfused culture is poisonous. The purpose of the culture war is to replace liberalism with socialism, which requires creating an environment in which socialism can triumph. This process is well underway, and our consensus values are being manipulated.
The flag stands for us as a group of people being united and being with each other in a time of need.
This country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country.
The flag means everything to me. It means life, it means freedom, it also means unity, and it means love.
We, the descendants of slaves in America, have earned reparations for their suffering.
And continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in the systemic prejudice, racism, and white supremacy.
All the flags, you ride down the street, and it makes you feel connected, like we're in this together.
We celebrate Juneteenth for the umpteenth time. Our account is still outstanding, because this country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country.
Socialism did not initially take hold in the West because the tenets of liberalism conflicted with and rejected those of socialism. Therefore, propaganda must first remove the established values, or they will act like antibodies and reject the newly transfused ones, like a virus. This is the process of creating counter-hegemony, destroying the existing culture to make room for a new one. Not long ago, freedom of speech was a consensus value in Western society. Today, free speech is called violence and demonized as a tool for bigots. 10 years ago, there was consensus on the fact that there are only two genders.
So what is this right here?
The pelvis. It's the only bone in the body that's gender specific, which means it's different in boys and girls.
Is it?
Yes. The pelvis's job to protect the organs used for digesting and reproduction, which means throwing babies.
Today, saying that will get you labeled as transphobic.
On that Tuesday morning, I was taken out of gym class to sit down with two adults for what turned out to be a very uncomfortable talk. I was told that people were complaining about the words on my shirt, that my shirt was making some students feel unsafe. Yes, words on a shirt made people feel unsafe. They told me that I wasn't in trouble, but it sure felt like I was. I was told that I would need to remove my shirt before I could return to class. When I nicely told them that I didn't want to do that, they called my father. Thankfully, my dad supported my decisions and came to pick me up. What did my shirt say? 5 simple words. There are only 2 genders. Nothing harmful, nothing threatening, just a statement I believe to be a fact.
As Kathy Barnett said, values we once considered common sense has now been replaced with sheer idiocy. The value of freedom of speech has not changed, nor has human biology. What has changed is the social consensus on these, and many other issues. This change has not occurred because better information has led to enlightenment. Instead, manipulation is breeding ignorance, indicating that the transfusion is working, truth is dying.
There's truth and there's untruth. But if you stick to the truth, even against the whole world, you're still not mad.
Please like, subscribe, and comment. You can also support this channel by downloading my book, Ministry of Truth: How Propaganda Fuels the Culture War,